Hello everybody, welcome to Sin City Living. We are going over the how to deal dice all over again, starting from the very beginning, as in a dice student that just walked into the school, just signed up, and they are starting on dice. They've never seen a dice table before in their lives. So typically we would start out with the tour of the table. So I don't have a full table, although I do have 8 feet worth of table. I'm not going to run the camera all the way around everything, but you've got 2 sides of the table and they mirror. This side is called third base. Then the other side, which is over there, is called second base. And then you've got the stick person right there. Stick person is in charge of all those bets and the dice. And then the base dealer, third base, I'm in charge of these bets. Second base dealer over there is in charge of those bets. Sitting in between would be the box if the table has a box person. Now, wherever you are on the table, the hand that is closest to the box is your inside hand. It's inside of the table. The hand that is closest to the players is your outside hand. The biggest thing I see dice students do through the first week or 2 of the course is they have a tendency to always say left and right. Left hand, right hand. No. It's always inside and outside hands, because the moves are all dependent upon which side of the table you were on as far as what hand you use. There is no rule, there's nothing that you do that is you always use your left hand or you always use your right hand. There is you always use your inside hand or you always use your outside hand. Outside hand, inside hand. Okay? Next, and this will be a real brief overview because we'll go more into it a little bit later, but the table curves. You have your stick person there, and then you have the slots for all the checks, and they come around, and then they curve all the way around to next to the dealer. Right? Most tables have 10 slots for chips, even though we only allow 8 players. So generally, where that curve is, right where that curve is, there's a piece of wood, because there's 2 sets of two slots for the chips on either side of that curve. We call that the hook. If it's on this side towards the stick person, it's the bottom hook, and on this side towards the base person, it's the top hook. Some dealers will also say, if they're talking to the stick person, they'll say your hook or my hook, which also gets the point across which part of the hook they are on. That will actually matter when we get to positioning of the bets. It doesn't really matter for right now. Now, a lot of instructors will say that you position bets based on where the person's chips are. That's usually the best way to do it, because some players will sit there and they'll sway as they're playing. They bounce back and forth, foot to foot, or kind of move around. So it's a good rule of thumb to put their chips or put their bets where their chips are, but some players also hold their checks in their hand the entire time. So you just do the best you can. Do the best you can, just make sure it makes sense. Now, for craps, it all starts with these right here. These right here. The dice. And there's always 5 or 6 dice. I've yet to see a craps table that had 4 dice. There's always 5 or 6 dice. There's always extra dice for a couple of reasons. Reason 1, in case dice go off the table, we've got other dice that we can use so we don't stop the game while we go find the dice. And reason number 2, highly superstitious game. A lot of players like to pick their dice. They like to have choices. So they have 5 or 6 dice to choose from when they start their roll. The game itself runs off of 2 dice. 2 dice. So numbers between 2 to 12. So with these dice, standard 6-sided dice, there are 36 combinations of the dice. And this is where all the payouts come from. All the payouts and all the odds all stem from 36 combinations of the dice. It's one of the ways that craps fools people. For instance, right here, got all these numbers here. 2, 3, 4, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's 7 numbers. There's only 4 numbers that aren't there, so people are like, man, I can't miss right there. 36 combinations of the dice, only 16 of them are in here. It's one of the ways that craps fools the players. Combinations of the dice. Anything that is a pair, there's only one possible way for it to come. 1 in 36 chance. So if you've got aces, a hard 4, and it's hard if it's a pair. If it was a 3-1, it'd be an easy 4. Hard 6. Hard 8. Hard 10. And a 12. Every one of those, there's only one way out of the 36 ways that it can come. All right, we call that high side when we get to center action bets, and that's going to be much further along in this course. So anything that's a pair, there's only one possible way for it to come. Anything that is not a pair, let's look at this easy 8 right here. All right, there's actually 2 ways for this to come. And this is another thing that fools a lot of players. They think there's only one way for this to come. That is not true, because it can come 3-5 or it can come 5-3. That is 2 different ways for the dice to land to get to the same number. 3-5, 5-3. 2 different ways. Same number, 2 different ways. So these are what we also call low side. So basically, if it's not a pair, there's 2 ways for it to come. If it is a pair, there's only one way for it to come. And that is where all the payouts come from craps. So let's go to the most basic core part of the game. So you've got your puck, right? The puck stays right over here when it says off. When it says off, that means really the game has not started yet. We have what we call a come out roll, right? Now, a lot of people think the off and the on refers to the point. It actually doesn't. Back in the day, these were just black and white. Had nothing to do with the point because it gets moved to wherever the point is. The off and on dealt with the bets, right? And whether or not the bets were off or on. And again, we will cover that in depth further on in the course when we actually get to those bets. So the game itself, it starts off with this puck off. We have a new shooter, so they will get all the dice. They get to pick their 2 dice. And then they will throw them across the table. We play full court, so they have to throw them across the table, whichever side they're on, and they have to rebound off the back wall. That ensures a fair roll for everybody. Whatever it lands on, if it lands on one of these numbers, we will mark that point, and the game has now started. If it's not one of these 6 numbers, then it's a win or loss condition, but it does not end that shooter's roll. Even if they lose their bet, it does not end that shooter's roll. They're still shooting because they haven't even started the game yet. So it's got to be one of these numbers to start the game, to set the point. Anything else is a win-loss condition. Now, in order to shoot, they have to have, I'm going to go with, we'll stick with red. They have to have either a pass line or a dump pass, but we're going to start with pass line. We're only going to worry about pass line right now. So, player has a pass line bet. One of these numbers roll. We mark the point. And now, in order for them to get paid there, they have to roll the number that is marked. That is the win. If they roll that number, in this case if it was an 8, if they rolled an 8, they would get paid even money on the pass line. The point would turn off. And we're in a come out roll all over again. Once again, we are starting the game. Only we're not at a new shooter. It's the same shooter because they hit a winner, so they're going to get the same 2 dice. If they want to get all the dice, they can. But we're just going to give them the same 2 dice. They can collect up their winnings. They leave a pass line bet down. Now, like I said, if it's not one of these 6 numbers, it's a win or loss condition. Win or lose. So 4, 5, 6, 8, 9 sets the point. 2, 3, or 12. 2, 3, or 12 are crap numbers. Those are the crap numbers. That's why when a 7 out occurs and players say, oh, they crapped out, that's not true in any way, shape, or form because 7 is not a crap number. 2, 3, and 12 are crap numbers. On a come out roll, 2, 3, or 12, this pass line loses. Then they'll have to put a new bet down and keep shooting because again, they lost their money, not their turn, so they're still shooting. If a 7 or an 11 roll, they win. They'll get paid. Always even money in the pass line. They'll collect up their winnings, and they keep going. So 2, 3, or 12, a crap, they lose, and they have to put a new bet down. 7 or 11, they win. They can collect their winnings, and they keep going. Now, for those of you guys that are doing the math on that, 7 or 11 wins. Well, with these 36 combinations of the dice, there are 6 ways for a 7 to roll, and there are 2 ways for an 11 to roll. So 8 of the 36 combinations of the dice, they'll win on that pass line. 2, 3, or 12, they lose. That's 4 combinations. that means they're a 2-to-1 favorite to win on the pass line during a come out roll. During a come out roll and during a come out roll only. Now, once they establish a point, once this is on and the point is established, the only thing that affects that pass line bet is either the point or a 7. A 7 is what loses, and we move on to the next shooter. If they roll their point, they win. Anything else rolls, it does not affect that pass line. They may have other bets, but once there's a point, 2, 3, or 12 are now meaningless. They don't lose. An 11 is now meaningless. It doesn't win. A 7, however, will lose. A 7 will lose. Now, why is 7 the losing number? Well, let's go over real fast. Let's go over the combinations of the dice. So 36 combinations of the dice. You notice it goes from 6 to 8, because 7 is obviously not a point. So in my head, I always pictured 7 as just super skinny and stuck in between here, right? So we have 6 ways for the 7 to, actually, let me do it this way. We have 6 ways for a 7 to roll. For a 6, how many combinations are there? Well, you've got your hard 6, your 3-3. That's one combination. Then you've got your 5-1. Since we know that's not a pair, that means there's 2 ways for it to come. Then we've got our 4-2. Also not a pair. That means there's 2 ways for it to come. So for a 6 to roll, there are 5 combinations. Same with an 8. So for a 9, there are 4 combinations. Same with a 5. For a 10, there are 3 combinations. Same for a 4. Now, following along with this logic that you might be spotting, can anybody guess how many combinations there are for an 11 or for a 3? I was just extend it out. 2. 2 combinations for an 11, 2 combinations for a 3. And we already covered the fact that a 12 and a 2 are pairs, which means there's only 1 combination. So, why is the 7 the one that loses? Well, the most combinations of the dice. It is the most likely number to roll. So it's going to lose, or that's what's going to end the game. Once there's a point established, the player is no longer the favorite. When they're on a come-out roll, again, 2-to-1 favorite to win. But once the point is established, they are no longer the favorite. Now, if they roll a 6, or they roll whatever the point may be, like let's say we're on the come-out roll. Right? So they roll an 8. So we set an 8. So now 2, 3, and 12 no longer matter, and neither does an 11. But the 7, however, instead of being a winner, now would lose over there. So now the only things that matter is 8 or 7. So they keep rolling. A 5 does nothing, and a 7. So 7 out, they lose. Turn off the point. And we go to a new shooter. They get all the dice. They get to select again. This right here is the absolute core, very, 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 very first part of dealing craps. So the first thing that we will tell people, now when you were paying and when you were collecting, you always do it from closest to you around to the stick person. Always start closest to you around to the stick person. And the reason for that is, let's say we're on a come-out roll, or no, let's say we were on that 8 and the 7 out came. Well, if I reach all the way over here, I am visually blocking these bets right here from the view of the box person. And if I'm not paying attention, maybe the stick person's talking to me, or I'm talking to this player, and I'm not paying close enough attention, because we're used to people reaching in to start putting their new bets down. So I'm not paying attention, and I don't notice that this player over here picks up their bet. Nobody else saw it either because I'm blocking them. So I have to start closest to me and sweep around. Always want to use 2 hands. 2-handed dealer is always better than a 1-handed dealer. Same thing if I'm paying. If I reach over here to pay first, what's to say that this player doesn't cap their bet? So instead, I come around this way and pay from closest to me all the way around to the base dealer. So the first thing that we tell students as they're learning is to learn the most basic part of the game, set up 3 or 4 pass line bets, and roll them out. So with an 8, there we go. Now we're going to roll. 5 does nothing. 6 does nothing. 7 out. And we have the students run this a few times, sometimes, usually 10-15 minutes per student. Usually have a couple other students watching them, because what it really gets them used to, what it really gets you used to, is it really gets you used to a real quick analysis of knowing 2, 3, and 12 lose, 7, 11 win, and win. See, a lot of them get real confused once there's a point and say 2 rolls, they start reaching because they want to take it. But it's only on the come out roll. Same thing with 11. Or we'll have a 7 roll during a come out roll and they'll start taking them because they don't have that set, that habit set. So that's the first thing you want to do, is you want to set that basic drill in place first before we even get into the next more important thing. So before we get into the next add-on to the pass line and the first part that starts getting a little confusing for people, I want to go over core skills and core setups of craps. So the first thing is, and I'm glad I've got the camera set so you can almost see, back behind the numbers will be what we call our working stacks of checks. Closest to the outside, lowest denomination. Highest denomination always closest to the box, and they go in order, which is again why you cannot go left, right, because over here I've got them set up this way because this is my outside hand, so my outside hand is always going to be the direction where the lowest denomination is. But on the other side of the table, all this flips. It all flips around, which is again why no left, right with craps. And you have to be ambidextrous, at least when it comes to payouts. So you've got your working stacks. Generally, we'll teach to follow these lines for your working stacks. Now, when you get a little bit more advanced, you're going to switch them out a little bit, especially you get into places with higher denominations where you may have 7 or 8 sets of working stacks. You might go all the way out to the 5,000s or 10,000s, so you're going to have a whole lot more. So you won't necessarily be following the lines, but to begin with, we teach you to follow the lines because you need to leave enough space for the dice to land without being canted on 2 different stacks. Right? So eventually you might have them a little bit closer. Now, you cannot have a stack out if you don't have the lower denomination out. Like I can't have just this out. Have to have my aces out. Now, once you've been dealing for a long time and you're at a tier 3, tier 4 casino where you might be on, say, a reserve game with a $500 minimum bet or something like that, you may not have your aces out because not a single bet anywhere is going to deal with the aces. But for the most part, you can't have a stack out if you don't have the lower stacks out first. So let's talk about the three of the core things, 3 of the core skills or core knowledge points with craps. Things that you must be able to do. The first one takes a whole lot of practice. So when you first start craps, we teach this day 1, and we tell people you need to practice this every single day. And of course they don't, and then when they run into my midterm exams in the middle of the course, then they're screwed and have to spend a week and a half working on it. And that is drop cutting. Drop cutting. Drop cutting is unique to dice. There's something very similar they'll do in roulette, but drop cutting itself, its mechanics are unique to dice. In blackjack, you're sizing into everything. Now, it's assumed by the time you come to craps that you already know how to size in properly. If you don't, what are you doing at craps? Learn your basic, absolute core basic dealing skills first, then start working on craps. But it's assumed by the time you get to craps, you already know how to size in because you've tested out through blackjack. Drop cutting is where we do exactly what it sounds like. We cut out and we drop a set number of checks. Now, it's not put it on the table and peel off part of the stack, call that the peel off. And I know a few, I know one long-term dealer that does this and he gets made fun of mercilessly. I know of 4 or 5 other dealers that do it, but they are brand new dealers and they're considered extraordinarily weak because, well, many reasons, but that is one of the reasons. Because again, this is something that every dealer should know how to do once they come out of the craps class. Drop cutting, they are in the air. We separate out how much we need and then we, well, drop it. Pretty easy. If I need 2 checks, then I'm going to set out 2, and I'm going to drop it. I'm not going to turn my hand sideways and look at my hand. I'm just going to drop out 2. If I need 3, I'm going to drop out 3. If I need 4, I'm going to drop out 4. This takes a lot of practice because you have to teach your fingers how to feel it. If you turn your hand sideways and look, you will never learn how to drop cut. You have to cut them out wrong a whole bunch of times before your fingers start feeling it. If you always look, your eyes override that sense of touch and you will never learn how to drop cut. Now, there's multiple ways to drop cut. The way I do it is I separate out, I lift off what I'm looking for. So I'm looking for 3 here. So I have cut out 3 checks. It's my middle finger that is feeling the fact that there are 3 checks. Not my thumb, it's my middle finger. And then from here, I just drop it down. Now, there are other dealers that will do it. Now, this is very, very difficult for me to do. Other dealers will use their thumb and they roll them out the back.
T does that.
They roll them out the back. It's almost 50-50 on how they do, on dealers that do this. Either rolling it out the back or lifting and dropping. There are a rare few dealers that do what I call the pushback, where they push the stack back and then drop it down. To be honest, I actually do that when I drop 5. I push the stack back because my finger actually isn't able to feel 5. 5 is where I mess it up the most. I tend to drop 4 or 6. And it's weird because I can feel 4, but if I'm trying to cut 5, I may not notice that I have 4. But I do the pushback mostly because instead of feeling it, I've just kind of become used to how far up my finger needs to go to push to get 5. And look at that, it's 4. But most either lift like this or roll it out the back. A select few push. It does not matter which one you do. Whatever is most comfortable for your hands. Figure out which one. I was shown all 3 methods. The way I do it is just most comfortable for my hands and just the way that I end up doing it. I'm slowly trying to teach myself to roll it off the back, but I just have difficulty with it. Now, a lot of women dealers that have nails roll it out the back because your fingernail will get in the way. If you have now, casinos most casinos have a policy on how long the nails can be. Usually like a 1/4 inch, 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch. 1/4 inch is actually long enough that if you're trying to do the lift or the push, your fingernail will get in the way. So most of the women I know that have their nails done as dealers do the roll off, the thumb roll off the back. But I also know quite a few female dealers that always have their nails cut super short, so they do either one. So drop cutting. Now the next one, and that's something you're just going to have to practice and practice and practice and practice. I still practice to this day. The next one is picking. Picking is something that we do when we need 5 or less checks. You never pick 6 because that's an interception, and that's not good. But you never pick 6 or more. Always 5 or less. If we need 5 or less checks, we pick it. And by picking, what we mean with that is we just grab however many we need. If I need 3 checks, if I need 3 red chips, I'm just going to grab 3 red chips. If I need 2, I'm just going to grab 2. It's to the point where I don't even need to think about it. 4, got 4. 1, pretty easy. 3,
You can't grab
pretty easy.
1.
Now, what we teach people, this is the drill that you want to do. You want to get yourself your stack of red and your stack of white, and you're going to set it up this way. And you're going to do in sets of 7. You're going to do 7, 14, 21, and 28. And you're going to cut out that denomination only using red and white. You're going to cut it out 20 times per number per side. So I would cut out $7, then I would cut out 14, then I would cut out 21. And then the hardest one is the 28 because you have to pick 5. Then I would cut out the 28. And then I would do it again. Do it again, do it again, do it again. Now you can either do 7 20 times and then do 14 20 times, 21 20 times, or you can do all 4, then 20 times. After you have done it 20 times, switch your stacks. Because again, depends on what side of the table you were on. So you have to be used to dealing with both hands. That is actually one of my bigger weaknesses right now. I can deal either side of the table, any side of the table. I actually strongly prefer to be on this side of the table because I've dealt on this side of the table probably 90% of my shifts. So some of the tricks that I do, my fingers don't want to do them on the other side, so I'm the tiniest bit slower because I can't do some of my shortcuts. But when you run this drill, you run it both hands 20 times per number, and this is not something you do once, this is something you do repeatedly until you can pick without even thinking about it. Now, again, don't turn your hand sideways. If you turn your hand sideways, you will never learn how to pick. I know people that still cannot pick. Okay, and the last two core things that dice dealers must know. First one is differences between blackjack and craps. Biggest thing, how we cut checks out. How we cut checks out. Now I've got Amy sitting here watching, so she can correct me when I talk about the blackjack side of things. But I want to say for blackjack, let's say we needed to cut out $45, right, in red. For blackjack, it would be 5 and 4.
Yeah.
Because everything is in stacks of 5.
Depending on where you deal.
Right. Most places it's going to be 5 and 4. It's going to be how you're going to be taught, because the dealing schools are going to teach what is predominant at the majority of places. And casinos know that they need to fine tune if someone's straight out of dealing school. Occasionally there are dealing schools that actually have close connections to certain casinos, so they will specifically teach their policies in some situations. For instance, if they know that they have maybe they've got that casino, one of their partners is doing a big audition in a week or two. They may spend a week or two teaching that casino's policies, but overall they're going to go over what is the majority. So 5s are always cut in stacks of 5 for $25 because it's easy math, right? If you got $100, you just cut out 4 stacks of 5, pretty easy. Same thing with hundreds, and same thing with ones. Now quarters, the greens, we actually cut out in stacks of 4 because it's an even 100. It's a lot easier to do the math. We cut out a whole bunch of stacks. If they were 125, you got to sit there and do some math in your head. They're all hundreds. It's easy. So blackjack, you're going to cut out 5 and 4. That is not how you're going to cut it out in craps. Also in blackjack, let's say you go even higher. You can say $70. $70. You cut it out 5, 5, and 4. In craps, that's also how you would do it. But when you're down at 10 or less, it's a little bit different. Anything up to that original stack of 5 is going to be cut out that way. If you need $5, obviously you cut out 1. If you need $10, you cut out 2. 15, 3, 20, 4, and 25, 5. But after that, it gets a little bit different. If we need $30, we don't cut it out like this. That's how they cut out blackjack. This ain't blackjack. It's 3 and 3. And here's the thing. They're touching. Because these stacks are the same height, they are touching. Same number of checks, the stacks are touching. Even if they're different colors. If I was cutting out $18, they would be touching. If I was cutting out 17, there would be a gap. So, this is how we cut out 6 checks. If we cut out 7, it'd be like that. It would not be 5 and 2. It would be 2 stacks of 3 and 1. That is the technical proper way. You will see a lot of dealers that will cut it out like this. But the technical proper way would be 3, 3, and 1. Which means that if we needed 8 of them, it'd be like that. If we needed 9 of them, just like that. Okay? So again, if the stacks are the same height, they are touching. A lot of these common procedures and policies come into place because it needs to be something that can be glanced at and understood. Just a quick glance and understand. My eyes are scanning the table, and very rarely does the amount actually register in my head. I just see that it's cut out properly, and my brain just knows, having seen it a couple thousand times or more, that that is correct. I'm not actually adding it up in my head. I just know because they are touching. There's a gap if they are not the same height. Same color checks stay near each other. And largest checks always closest to the box. So if I needed $145, I might cut it out like that. Largest checks always closest to the box. You should, good practice, technical procedure, but one that's not followed very often, you should cut out the largest checks first. So if I needed to cut out, I don't know, $780, technically I should start with the 500, then I should go with the blacks, then I should go with the greens, and then I would go with the reds. Now you notice there's a gap between every single one of those because none of those stacks are the same. If I was cutting out $880, it would look like this because they're the same height, same number of checks. Now, one core skill that all dice dealers must have, you must be able to read stacks 5 or less. You just have to be able to just look at it and read it. Read how much it is. Every dice dealer needs to be able to look at that and know it's 25. I know you guys can't see it from the cameras. It would look like about an angle like that to you if you were standing on the table looking at it. About an angle like that. And dealers need to be able to read stacks of 5, even if they're different colors. Even if they're different colors, dealers need to be able to just look at it and read it. If it's 5 or less checks, you need to be able to just look at it and read it. A sign of an astonishingly weak dealer is one that has to touch every single bet. I know a few. I know a few that have been dealing for 10, 15, 20 years that if they had that, would have to do this. Would have to pick it up and look at it, or pick it up and do that. I know a few that do it just to give themselves time to think. They can look at that and know that's 25, but they're going to go, I don't know why. It's not like there's checks hidden underneath or something. But they have to look to make sure that there's no, nothing hiding in the hole in the table underneath, I guess. No, you need to be able to read it. You need to be able to read 5 checks or less. That is a skill that you develop with time. Skill you develop with time. Now, as far as cutting out payouts go, this area right here is the dealer's working area. We usually will say, the whole cum is technically the dealer's working area, but we usually say that where they have the letters is the dealer's working area. And I actually knew a teacher that would turn this into a phrase. Cut out money every time. Into the cum. Always cut out money. You never, ever, ever go straight from your working stacks to the player. If I needed to pay a player $35, I would never grab pick 2 reds, pick 1 green, and go straight out to the player. Never, ever, ever. First off, in order to pay it properly with one hand, I would actually have to do what's called going hand to hand. I would have to take checks and go both hands to it. Right? Just like doing this. This is called going hand to hand. Never, ever, 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 ever go hand to hand. If you need to switch hands, put it down. Right? That's why I don't understand a dealer that needs to pay, say, $10. Oh yeah, give that player $10 change. I have actually seen dealers that do this because we always pay with our outside hand. So this hand is closest to them, so it's my outside hand on this side of the table. On the side of the table would be reversed. I've seen dealers that will pick it with their inside hand, to then go hand to hand, to then skip the cum entirely and give it to the player. So they violated 3 different procedures all in one move. And it makes no sense to me. I don't understand why you would use this hand instead of using this hand to pick it up. It just, I don't get it. And then we always cut out payouts into the cum. Cut out money every time. Always cut payouts out into the cum. And don't get lazy. If I need to cut out $35, I'm going to cut it out like that. What you will see experienced dealers do is what I call capping the payout. They are going to do it properly, and they're going to bring out the green first. They're also doing it properly. They're paying with 2 hands. Right? There's nothing more frustrating than seeing this. That's just irritating. You've got two hands, use it. But they'll cut out the green, and then they'll just drop the red directly on top of the green and then bring it out to the player. You'll see experienced dealers do that. And sometimes it's okay. Sometimes those dealers are trusted. If you're a break-in dealer, and by break-in I mean you've been dealing less than 2 years, every single dealer after they've been dealing for about 8 to 12 weeks suddenly thinks that they are the greatest dealers in the world, or that they have figured this out. They've figured it out, and that the box should trust them because they know what they're doing. They have figured it out. No, it doesn't work that way. But yes, you will see experienced dealers that will cap basic payouts. Basic payouts.
Doesn't mean you should.
But as a break-in, you never, ever, ever do it. And I'll tell you this as well. The absolute best dealers that I know that have been dealing 20, 30, 40 years, I know some terrible dealers have been dealing that long, but the best dealers that I know still cut out payouts properly to this day. They never got lazy. They never developed any bad habits. But when you cut out money, you use both hands. You cut out the largest checks first. Largest always closest to the box. Cut them out, and you make sure that they are separated so that they can be read. Somebody is always double checking your payout. It's either the box or the stick person, depending on what side of the table. So even the most basic payouts, if I have to cut out $35, yes, I'm trusted to just cap the payout and bring it out. Plus, when I pay it off to the player, the way I pay it out, heeled off, which is the proper way to pay out, behind the pass line. When I hand it off, they can read that right there because it's heeled off properly, so they can read it there. But on a basic payout, I'm trusted enough to cap a simple bet. They know that I know how to pick it, that I know how to pay it, that I'm not going to make a mistake. But even with those simple payouts, oftentimes I bring it out, move my hands just for the tiniest second, and then stack it back up and cut it out. Now you always hand off payouts with your outside hand, and every payout is always heeled. Always heel your payouts. There's a lot of lazy dealers that just do that. And again, I know dealers have been dealing for 40 years that still heel off every single payout. Heel off the payouts. It takes absolutely no extra time, literally no extra time to heel off your payouts. So heel off every payout. And when you cut it out, if I needed to cut out $36, I would cut out 25, 10, 1, and I would move my hands just for the tiniest second, because whoever's watching, they again only need to see it briefly. And you notice that I cut out 3 colors all in one motion, but I still drop the largest checks first. So I pick the white, then I pick the red, then I grab green, red, white. And I'll drop it down, move my hands just for the tiniest second. I would just do a little swirl, and then I would stack it up with my outside hand, and then I heel it off, hand it off to the player, and heel it off. So again, I'm going to cut it out into the cum, move my hands, stack it up, bring it out, heeled off. That is the proper way to cut out payouts. It is never, ever, ever proper to go straight to the players. I have seen dealers do this. That is not proper. Not proper at all. Cut it out, and then hand it off, heeled off. That concludes the basic core skills necessary for every single dealer. So now let's start going into what can confuse the players or confuse the dealers. The first thing that gets a little bit confusing. So we already went over the combinations of the dice. And again, I always picture a 7 right in between the 6 and 8. And there's 6 ways for it to come. And then I know just going out, just drop 1. 5 ways, 4 ways, 3 ways, and then 2 ways for the 3 and 11, 1 way for the 1 and 12. That's how I pictured it when I first started. So the come out roll, to reiterate, 2, 3, and 12 lose, 7, 11 win. Once there is a point, the only thing that matters to the pass line is the point or a 7. Nothing else matters. Now, pass line bets get paid even money always. There is never, ever a situation where the pass line gets paid anything other than even money. Ever. What if they want to bet additional money? What if they want to bet more money? Can they? Yes. It's called odds. Odds are the best bet in the casino. That is something that is said all the time. Every craps table, every dealer will tell you this, every box will tell you this, and it's true. Because I challenge you to tell me another bet in the casino that does not have a house edge. Odds have 0 house edge. If a player wants to bet odds, they must have a pass line bet, and they will put the odds directly behind their bet. Now, whatever the table minimum is, that's what the odds have to be. Some people have this thing in their head that odds must match their pass line bet or be a certain multiple of their pass line bet. No, that's not true. Somebody can have a $200 pass line bet and $25 in odds. It's perfectly fine, as long as the table minimum is 25 or less. The odds must at least meet table minimum. So they put their odds behind their bet, and they can put any amount between table minimum and the table max for odds. And I'll do a very brief overview of that because it's going to depend upon where you go when you start dealing as far as what the odds are going to be. Most people are familiar with 3, 4, 5 odds. 3, 4, 5. And what that means is 3, 4, or 5 times. 3, 4, or 5 times. Now, there's some places off the strip that do 10 times, even 20 times. There's also a couple places that do 100 times. Now, why is it in terms of times and multiples? Because your odds, your maximum odds, is always based off of your flat bet on your pass line bet. Your pass line bet is called your flat bet because it's always paid even money. It's paid a flat amount. So that's called the flat bet. And your odds, your maximum odds, are always based off your flat bet. So if you're somewhere that is 3, 4, 5 odds, 3, 4, 5 times, well, that means that on a 6 or an 8, your maximum odds is 5 times your pass line bet. It's your max. Your minimum is table minimum. So again, you can have $500 pass line bet and just do 25 in odds. That is okay, as long as 25 is the table minimum. But if you have, say, $25 pass line bet and you're on the 8 and you're at 3, 4, 5 odds, you cannot do 200 in odds because that would be 8 times. 8 times your flat bet, and you're at 3, 4, 5, so you can only do 5 times. If you were on the 9 and you had a $25 flat bet, you can do 4 times. You could do up to $100. If you were on the 4 and 10, it's 3 times, so you'd be able to do $75 off your $25 flat bet. Now, some places are a flat 10 times, 20 times, or 100 times, which means that it does not matter what the number is. Your maximum odds is going to be 10 times or 20 times your flat bet. So how do these pay? Well, this over a little bit. We'll assume a $15 minimum bet table. One thing for you guys real fast as well, when it comes to stacks of checks, ones the players put down, that's fine. They can do whatever they want. Anything that you are in control of, never more than 5 checks max of a color. So what that means is if I had a $30 bet that I was setting up, and we'll get to the place bets and stuff like that later on, but if I were setting up that bet and it was $30, this is not the proper way for me to do it because that is 6 red checks. No, not allowed. No more than 5 checks in any specific color. There are occasional times where somewhat more advanced dealers will make a small exception, but the policy, the procedure is 5 or less of any given color. Otherwise, you change it out. But you cannot control what the players do, and you don't want to touch their money. Don't touch their money unless you absolutely have to. There are times where you have to fix a bet. So, let's go into how these pay. Well, we get back to, I'm going to remove these. These were the examples for the 2, 3, 11, and 12 as far as combinations of the dice go. So for the rest of these, let's look at the 4 and 10. So, once there is a point, the only thing that matters to that pass line bet, and therefore the odds, is the point, or a 7. 7 they lose, they make their point, they win. How many ways are there for them to lose? 6 ways. It's always 6 ways to lose once there's a point on the pass line. Always 6 ways. How many ways are there for them to win? 3 ways. So you've got 6 ways to lose 3 ways to win. Let's divide that by 2 to make it easier. Or divide that by 3, I'm sorry. Divide it by 3 to make it easier. That means that we get 2 ways to win, or 2 ways to lose, 1 way to win. 6 ways to lose, 3 ways to win, right? So what kind of odds is that? It's 2 to 1 odds. 2 to 1 odds. On the 4 and 10, odds pay 2 to 1. They pay double. So again, odds only bet in the casino that has no house edge. There's none. So that's why we make a focus to memorize how many combinations there are of the 36 combinations of the dice for every number. Because you don't need to know the odds if you know that. It helps, and eventually you're going to memorize the odds, and we're going to show you how. But you can always just go off the combinations of the dice. For instance, 5 and 9. How many ways are there to lose? We've covered that. 6 ways to lose. Always 6 ways to lose. How many ways are there to win? It's 4 ways for a 9 to roll, or 4 ways for a 5 to roll. So 4 to 6. I can divide that by 2. What do I get? 3 to 2. 3 to 2 odds. So therefore, every 2 that they bet wins 3. Every 2 they bet wins 3. For dealers that have come out of blackjack, it's easy. It pays blackjack.
Off script blackjack.
I'm going to get into that. 6 and 8. 6 and 8. 6 ways to lose, 5 ways to win. Therefore, every 5 pays them 6. Every 5 pays them 6. So the way I used to teach it to people is odds pay double, blackjack, cheap blackjack. That's how I used to teach it. Double, blackjack, cheap blackjack. Pays double their odds, pays 3 to 2, pays 6 to 5. Double, blackjack, cheap blackjack. That's how I used to explain it to people that were good at blackjack. It tends to escape students that, or doesn't really sink in deep to students that just finished, say, learning blackjack and went straight into the craps course. But that really sets in for people that have been dealing for a while and are coming to learn craps. Because they have a almost instinctive understanding of that 3 to 2 and that 6 to 5. And that makes it easier for them to pay it out. So now I'm going to get rid of these because, of course, we already know all the combinations of the dice, so we don't need this anymore. Now we're going to talk about how you pay odds. So as we know, we always pay the pass line bet from base dealer to stick. So I would always pay it this way. You notice we're starting with red. I do have one green one over there as an example. But notice we're starting with red. Every student wants to jump into black right away, or by the end of their course, or when they're messing around before or after the class, they want to jump into black, and because they think they look cool, I guess, when they can do black. But the thing is, the breaking casino, wherever you're going to go, the tier 1, tier 2 casinos, 99% of the bets are going to be green. Or going to be red, I'm sorry. They're going to be red. And then maybe 0.75% of the bets are going to have green. And then 0.25% are going to be higher than that, if that. So yes, you're going to end up dealing with black at some point. You're going to end up dealing with green at some point. But the massive majority of your time is going to be spent dealing with red, and that's what you need to be quick and smooth at. If you can't do the foundational, simple stuff smoothly and quickly, you're not going to be able to show off with your black because they're already going to think that you're a terrible dealer and get you off the table as fast as they can. I see a lot of dealers that go into a casino, they deal craps a couple of times, and then they notice that they're not getting a whole lot of craps time anymore. They're getting less and less and less and less and less. I guarantee you it comes down to these basic things, either those core skills that we covered or these basic payouts. So, if we're paying with red, if I look down around here, I notice that the first chunk of people I need to pay are all dealing with red. I do have a green over there, but the first chunk of people are all dealing with red. So what I am likely to do is I'm likely going to grab a double handful of red. We always pay odds first. Now, if we are paying one-handed, and sometimes we will, if all I have to say is a bunch of something, you always use your outside hand, so I'm not visually blocking the bet from the box. There are some situations where it's okay to do it. In fact, you have to when we get to like the 6 and 8. So it is acceptable to pay that this way for the odds. The flat bet, however, is not acceptable to pay with this hand because we're only sizing in once. So I will pay with my outside hand. It is also acceptable to do it that way. There's nothing wrong with that. But I'm going to come around. Now what you'll notice is that we always pay the odds first. That is procedure. You always pay the odds first. Now that I'm getting into over there, I could look at what they have in the rail and decide to only pay them red, or I pay them straight color for color. Because they have multiple colors, I need to break this down for the cameras. Now, when you get more advanced, you're just going to do maybe a small heel off or something along those lines. But the proper way is going to be to break it down just like that for the cameras. You don't break it down and then stack it back up. You break it down and you leave it there. So now,
That's true for all games.
I'm going to have the smallest check in my outside hand and the largest check in my inside hand. I could just pick two, absolutely, but let's say you've got multiple bets with the green, so you're gonna come out with a stack. Okay, so I've got the largest check in my inside hand, right, the one closest to the box. There's only going to be one exception to this, and we'll get into that in a few minutes. So I'm going to drop the largest check down. Now, since I'm paying this way, that means the payouts are on this side. On the other side of the table, they'd be on the other side because we're paying the other direction. Right? So I would drop the two green, and then I would size in. I absolutely hate seeing them then drop the two red. Why would you do that when you can just size in? Then I'm going to size in here. We always pay odds first. So 4 and 10, they're double. So what about 5 and 9? So the 5 and 9 pays 3 to 2 on the odds. So if we get a winner, now here's the thing. I have 2 improper bets out there, and I did it on purpose. We're going to leave those out there because they are going to happen. And I'm going to show you some advanced ways. Oh, I picked up a flat. I'm going to show you some advanced ways to pay some of the more common ones next, but we're going to start with the most basic things. So over there, anytime you have change, the casino keeps the change. You never round up to the player. If we owe a player $22.95, and I'm not too sure how, it would take me a minute to figure out a bet that could pull that. I could pull that off with a bet in there, but if we owe a player $22.95, they're getting $22. We always, always, always keep the change. So I have $15 in odds over there. Right? Theoretically, I should be grabbing this way. But in reality, just like we'll do with the 6 and 8, and I'll show you guys in a minute, the red is actually going to be in my outside hand. Red is going to be in my outside hand. The reason for that is because red is what I'm going to continue to use over and over and over again. So the red is going to stay in my outside hand. 15 pays 22. What we hate to see is drop 4, and then drop the 2. Reality, better, is to size in and then pay it this way. Even better is size in that way. Drop 1, put the 2 on top, size in. That's your 22. Easy and quick to read. Easy and quick to read. Easy and quick to read for the box. Boom, paid, done. The next one, $25 in odds. That's going to pay $37.50, just like the other one paid $22.50. Now we're dealing with 3 colors. There's a few different ways we could pay that, but the easiest way is to do it properly. Cut out $37, stack it up, and since this is going to the odds that we always pay first, this will go into my outside hand. I'll heel it off, and then I'll size in. I'll heel it off next to the bet, outside the pass line. Don't touch the line. That's a different type of payout that we will go into. Now, if I were in this situation, after I paid that, I would jump straight over to this bet because I already have the red. But technically, it should be my outside hand. It should be my outside hand, or both hands, to pay it. Right? So I could certainly do it this way. Now, I'm actually going to show you, I'm I'm going to show you two different ways to pay this bet. Back in the day, only one would have been considered proper, which is size in, drop 2. 20 pays 30. Going to size in and drop 2, then size in here. Now, what has become very, very common nowadays, to the point where it drives some old school boxes nuts, but for the most part, it's just so common it's almost become procedure, is 20 pays 30. So drop 3, size in. I don't see too much of a difference between the two. One, you're sizing in and then dropping. One, you're dropping and then sizing in. It's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I don't have a problem with that either way. Now over here, 30 pays 45. Now I could do it all in red, drop 4, size in, then drop 1. Or I can just bring out a green, drop the 4, size in. All right, that's a little bit cramped in there, so it's not as neat as we normally would do it, but you don't have a whole lot of choice when you're in a situation like this, especially because the player probably has their hand in the way right there, the one picking up that particular bet. So that would be how you would pay the 5 and 9. Now, on one of these, I am about to probably throwing me off a little bit, just like we did with that one.
Yeah, that one because my brain is screaming, why is this small denomination in front of a bigger one?
Just wait. So on the 6 and 8, every 5 pays 6. Every 5 pays 6. So since it's mostly red out there, I'm going to grab red on my outside, white on my inside. Now this is a stylistic thing. It's almost 50-50 dealers that do this. Red in their outside, white in their inside. The other 50% just goes straight out from the stack, so which makes a ton of sense. Now, I used to think it was an East Coast, West Coast thing. I was taught by an East Coast instructor, but I know an East Coast dealer that does it the other way. So 6 of one, half dozen the other. No real right or wrong answer on this one. So every 5 pays 6. Every red gets a red and a white. So I'm just going to come around, size in, and there we go. Now here, I could always grab a green and pay it that way, or I could size in with the red and the white. Either one. Come over here, come over here, and the beauty of this, and see here, I would stop. I would stop and I would bring it back. You don't pay part of the bet and then go back to your stacks. You see it a lot, but it's lazy. Now, here, once we break it down, 30 pays 36, right? 30 pays 36. So, that's how I would pay it. Now, you can cut out $36 this way. But the most common way I see it, drop 25, put your 1 on top, size in. There's your $36. That is your 36 bucks. Super, super, super common, super, super, super easy to read. In fact, I'm going to show you a trick about that when I cover the advanced ways of paying next. So here's where we would have students set up bets, just like we did before, where you just had a pass line bet and you rolled it out. So you got used to 2s, 3s, 11s, 12s, points, winners, 7 outs, all of that stuff. Now we would have them do the same thing, only we would have them put odds behind after there was a point set, and have them spend about an hour just rolling the dice, pay proper, take, whatever it may be. So now I'm going to show you guys a couple of common payouts and a few tricks on calculating out some of the payouts quickly. Then I'm going to show you one final thing with paying out on the pass line before we move on to a very complicated thing. So we'll finish up this little block as far as the pass line goes. So on the 5 and 9, you'll see players say on a $15 minimum bet table, right? So they've got their $15 flat bet, they put down 15 odds. Once you've been dealing for a little while, you're going to say, hey, drop $1 on top of there. Or say, hey, drop another chip on top of there. Either one. Because on the 5 and 9, every 2 pays 3. So they want to be in sets of 2. They want to be even in order to pay proper. So they drop $1 on top. So now they have 16 in odds. Well, if that wins, it pays 24. Generally speaking, especially when you start out, you're always going to pay color for color. You're not going to go up a color, generally speaking. So here, instead of giving him a green chip, now it pays 24. What I'll do is I'm going to size in, drop one, and then take the white. Okay, size in, drop one, then take the white. Do not drop 5, take the white. Okay, do not. There's nothing wrong with it inherently, except it's going to drive the boxes nuts, because if we see this, our eyes just scanned right on and moved on. No thought to it whatsoever. We know it was proper. We know it was proper. Now, except in certain situations, this right here is one that you're not likely to see very often. $12 in odds. Not likely to see very often. But it's a pretty easy one because you can size in and take both whites. 12 pays 18, right? So you give them 20 for 2. Now, I'm trying to decide if I want to show you guys that one yet or not. I don't think I will. We're going to save that for a little bit later. Now, one thing, when it comes to taking money from the players, procedure-wise, you're not allowed to touch the flat bets, okay? Never touch a flat bet. Flat bets need to stay the way they are. But you can manipulate the odds. You can manipulate the odds. So, 20 pays 30. What if the player has about this much red up in their rail? Do we want to keep giving them more and more and more and more red so that eventually we have to do a fill, and then when they color up we've got way too much red? No, of course not. You want to deal to their rail. Now, when you're an absolute bare minimum break-in, they won't allow you to deal to the rail. But within a month or two, if you're still dealing craps, they're probably going to want you to start dealing to the rail. So again, I'm not supposed to take anything off the pass line bet. So 20 pays 30, 50 for 20. And size in.
I like that.
Okay. Now another thing that you could do, 50 for 20 and size in. All I have to do is bring out the 2 greens. I don't have to bring out the red because I'm taking the red. So I can manipulate it that way if necessary. If necessary. There's other ways I could have done it.
Both of those moves.
There's another way I could have done it that I'm going to show you guys in just a moment. Now, let's look at the 6 and 8. 6 and 8. So the first thing to cover is, what if they stack a bunch of white on top of there because. Well, when I go to break it down, I look at it and I notice that there's 5 of them, okay? It's 5 whites. So I might just pick it up, replace it with a red, and then size in. And drop the checks everywhere. Yeah. Just pick them up, replace it, and then size in using the stack that I just picked up. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. Now sometimes they have an improper bet out. Well, just going to have to deal with it. Just going to have to deal with it and figure it out. The easiest way to figure it out, add a 0. They've got $3 there. What would $30 pay? Well, $30 would pay 36. So 3 pays 360. Don't need to worry about the 60 cents. 3 pays 3. It pays even money. On the 6 and 8. On the 6 and 8. When you get it up to the other numbers, then, I mean, on the 5 and 9, you know, if it's improper, it pays $1. It's either going to be even or it's not.
Right.
And the 4 and 10, you can't be improper. It pays double. It's impossible to be improper. But with the 6 and 8, there's a few other tricks that can come into play. And I am going to do them first. And then explain them out. So I'm going to do them first and then explain them. Okay, so it's a brief overview for you guys because I know you can't see it from your angle. Forget about the flat bets right now. We're on the 8, right? 6 or 8. The odds. For odds, I've got $35 in odds. I've got $60 in odds. I've got $80 in odds, so clearly they're on a 10 times place. And I've got $30 in odds. Okay? So you can sit there and figure out, divide by 5, multiply by 6, or you can pay it the way I would pay it. Just like that. Like that. that, and like that. I didn't do the math on any one of those payouts. Not a single one of them. I just went out and paid them. And the reason for that is I paid it by color. Here's the thing. I have a really bad sizing right there too.
Shame.
Yeah. Here's the thing. 5 pays 6, right? So every green gets paid a green and a red. Every red gets paid a red and a white, right? So that means that for their odds, if they have a red stacked on top of a green, all I have to do is stack a white on top of a green and then size in with red. So when I looked around those odds, I saw 2 reds on top of a green, so I stacked 2 whites on top of a green. I didn't need to think about anything else because I'm just sizing in. I saw 2 reds on top of 2 greens, so I stacked 2 whites on top of 2 greens. And then sized in with the red. 1 red on top of 3 greens, 1 white on top of 3 greens, and then size in with a red. 1 red on a green, so 1 white on a green, size in with red. Don't have to think about it, don't have to do the math. And this is an acceptable trick. At a break-in casino, you may occasionally run into a box that is, I hate to put it this way, but too weak for that. But in general, this is an acceptable way to pay. Now, let's go over the final little bit of trickiness with past 9 payouts. The last thing that you can do. Now, this thing should be allowed to every dealer all the time. However, a lot of places, break-in places, will not allow their dealers to do this until they've been dealing for a little while.
Because they feel they can't, or they don't want them to get too big for their britches?
It's a trust thing for the most part. And in some cases, it's just a stubbornness thing. I worked at a place that did not allow dealers to do this until they were full time. So, but it was a break-in. It was a break-in house, and the best dealers never went full time because they were all aiming for tier 3, tier 4 casinos. So the ones that accepted full time were actually the weakest, and so they were allowed to do things that the better dealers were not allowed to do. In theory, once they started to trust us, we could do a little bit more. But this is something. This is called totaling. Right? Again, you can manipulate the back. You can't manipulate the front. I should probably have the reds in here just for the heck of it. So let's look at the 10 because we pay out in double. Let's look at the 10. So we've got $40 in odds back, or $45 in odds back there, which pays 90 bucks. And then we've got a $15 flat bet. $15 flat bet. So this could be 3, 4, 5 odds actually. $15 flat bet and $45 in odds. So it pays $90 in the back. So we could certainly go 90 and then size in with the reds. We can do that. There's nothing wrong with that. Totally proper. But what if they've got just a butt ton of red? Well, let's see. 90 and 15 totals out to 105. So I could cut out 105. Now, you never reach for blacks, ever. So you don't pay with black until they've handed it to you. Right? But I could also do this with green. Either one. It's called totaling. When you total, same as before, you heel off the payouts, but you're directly on the line. Directly on the line in between the 2 bets. When you total, again, heeled off, all payouts are always heeled off, you're directly on the line between the 2 bets. Let's look at, say, a 5 and 9. 5 and 9. Over here, we've got 50 in odds, $25 flat bet. So 50 pays 75 in the back, plus 25 is 100 bucks. Now I can't heel this off, but I'm going to put it directly on the line if I paid it with black. If I paid it with green, I would heel it off. 20 pays 30, plus 15 is 45, right? 30 plus 15 is 45, but they've got a ton of red, so I'm going to cut out 50 bucks for one red. Again, I'm not manipulating the front, I'm only manipulating the back, the odds. And I totaled it, so I dropped it right here. Now, the biggest thing, explain it to your players. Talk it out to your players. So many dealers want to do moves like this because they think they look cool and they think they look professional, they think they look super smart, and then the player starts asking, hey, what's that pay? What'd you do? What, huh? Versus, I'm paying everybody and I'm getting to the next player, right? Because the situation like this with all the different colors, I might come back and forth to my stacks. I could, try and pick the whole line and get it all set up in my hand, but honestly, most of us think that's kind of silly. So I'm probably coming back and forth quite a bit. So as I'm finishing that payout, I'm glancing at that one. I start talking to that player right away. And I tell him, 20 pays 30 plus 15 is 45. I'm giving you 50 for 5. Talk it out. You could talk it out super fast. There's no need to you're not taking any more time for yourself. I'm just saying, hey, 20 pays 30 plus 15, 45. I'm giving you 50 for 5. And then I move on to the next player. But talk it out. Explain it out to your players. Explain it out to your players. Here's another one. 30 pays 45 plus 10. Oh, actually, that one doesn't work. What was I going for on that? Oh, this is actually a fairly common one. 30 pays 45 plus 15 is 60. And I would talk it out. 30 pays 45 plus 15 gives you 60 bucks. And then move on. You don't have to talk slow, just explain it out to them so that they understand, especially when you take money from them. Especially when you take money from them. I know dealers that like to do it just to be jerks, basically. Here's an example of one. And this is completely improper. When you're really advanced, you might be able, you'll probably be allowed to do this when you're tier 3, tier 4 casino, but this is definitely improper. I can do this if I wanted to, if it came up. But 4 and 10. 10 in odds, $10 flat bet, right? 10 in odds, $10 flat bet. 10 pays 20, plus 10 is 30, right? I know dealers that'll do this. And they won't say a word. The reason they're doing it is just kind of mess with the player. We should not manipulate the pass line bets. Sometimes we will, but we should not. But you can total, and if you total, you leave it directly on the pass line. Run some drills, guys. Practice this stuff over and over and over again, because we're about to get into really confusing territory. Okay, so now that you guys have mastered, or at least started to get the basics on the pass line and the odds, we're going to move on to the next thing. So the next piece are called come bets. And at one point in time for craps, they were the predominant additional bet beyond the pass line. Now it's probably the number 2, but since it ties in with the pass line, we go over it at this point. Plus, it enables you to get even better at paying the pass line as well. So, as we know, once there is a point, let's say we're a $10 table, make it easy. Once there's a point, say it's the 9 or something, then the player can go ahead and put their odds down. We've already covered that, and we've covered how the odds pay, double blackjack, cheap blackjack. What if they want to play other numbers? What if they want to play other numbers? This is like I said, the second most common way of doing it, and it's a pretty wide gap between first and second, but this still gets played a lot. You will deal to this every single day, multiple times throughout the day. The come bet is placed right here in the come. It is a self-service bet, just like the pass line, which means they put it down themselves. And the best way to think about a come bet is a come bet is starting a brand new game. A come bet is the equivalent of turning around to another table that has no point and putting a bet down on the pass line. That is basically what it is. That's exactly what it is. It is starting a brand new game. So what that means is that while this bet right here is in the come, it is the equivalent of this bet when there is no point. Now this is going to get pretty complicated. There's going to be some drills later on, and the thing about the come bets and eventually the place bets, but especially the come bets and the don't comes, is that it's really, really, really going to sink in pretty close to the end of phase 2. When we tie everything together is when you will see how this all ties in together and how it all works. So consider this more of a familiarization than anything else, because the drills are going to be very, very, very basic. You'll do pieces of the come bet at a time, and then when we tie it all, everything together at the end of phase 2, it's all just going to click. But once again, a come bet while the point is on, you cannot bet the come when there is no point. And the reason for that is, that's what this is. The pass line bet when the point is off. That's what a come bet is in the come when the point is on. So what that means is, if you will remember, you will know how this wins or loses while it is in the come. Because again, it's the equivalent of a pass line bet with no point. So what that means is a 2, 3, or 12 rolls, this loses. If a 7 or 11 rolls, this wins. So some people like to try and bet this because they think it's a hedge over here. If a 7 rolls, they lose here, but they'll win here. It's kind of silly. It's also besides the point as far as dealing goes. Now, the next roll of the dice will set the point for this come bet. Because the pass line bet already has the point set here as a 9. Obviously, we can't have 6 pucks out at the table. That would be extraordinarily confusing. So how do we signify what point is set for this come bet? Well, let's say an 8 rolls. We're going to take the come bet and we're going to slide it inside the box. The way I like to term it to players is that the bet itself is the puck. The bet will show you what number it is betting on. Now, just like with the pass line, a come bet can get odds because, again, it is just a pass line bet. It's just a brand new game is all it is. But we don't have any place behind the bet to put the odds. So how do we put the odds? We put it directly on top of the bet, but forward about 1/3 to half of the width of the flat bet. So it is offset forwards on the flat bet. Now, 2 questions that I know you guys are probably having. First one is, how do I know where to put this? How do I know where to put this bet? Well, these boxes correspond to the table. When we're on this side of the table, this 8 will curve this way, because this side of the table is curving this way. The 8 will curve this way. But we don't do anything with the sides. So we only use the front and the back. So these front 4 spots, and let me show you. It's 4 chips wide. These front 4 spots are the bottom hook. They're these 4 spots right here. And then these back 4 spots are once you get past the hook. Now on this side of the table, because the table curves this way, on this side of the table, that means that this bet right here, the number 1 position, is the player closest to the stick person. They're right over there. They're in that number 1 position. That also means that this player right here is at the bottom of the hook. They're still on that side of the table, but they're at the bottom of the hook. This player right here is at the top of the hook. They've already curved around the table. And this player is right here, is the closest player to the base dealer. On the other side of the table, it would all reverse. It would reverse because the table is going in the opposite direction on the curve. So once the number rolls that sets the point for the come bet, it slides inside the box. One thing that is very important, critically important, this bet cannot touch these lines. This flat bet must be entirely within the box. Cannot touch these lines. You will find out why in phase 2. It's a different type of bet that will touch those lines. And then they get to place their odds. Should they choose, they don't have to place odds, but should they choose, they can go ahead and place their odds. Now, come bets are self-service bets, and they are bet in the come. We treat them just like a pass line bet. So when we pay a pass line bet, do we hand that money off to the player, or do we pay the pass line bet and then just leave it right there on the pass line? We leave it right there. It's a self-service bet. So therefore, when we're paying the come bets, we're going to leave the payouts right there in the come where they bet it. Now remember, you always pay with your outside hand. You always hand off. So on this side of the table, that would be this hand because the players are over here. So that's my outside hand. So I'm going to look at this. If an 8 were to roll, that means that this bet wins. So if this bet wins, I'm going to look at it, and you should verbalize what you were doing. You start with the odds, then you go with the flat bet, because flat bets always pay what? Even money. Flat bets always pay even money. So how do the odds pay on an 8 or a 6? Every 5 pays you $6. We've already covered that. That deals with the pass line. Again, it's just a brand new game. It's just another pass line bet. So if an 8 were to roll, a good dealer will look down at the bet and look at the odds. There's 20 odds. I know you have trouble seeing that, but there's $20 in odds, and there's a $10 flat bet. So a good dealer is going to verbalize it all out so that their box person can hear it. They're going to look at it and go, 20 pays 24 plus 10 is 34. They total it all out. 20 pays 24 plus 10 is 34. And then they're going to cut out their $34. Cut out the 34. Now, again, this is a stack that is the same height, so these should be touching. We're going to cut it out so it can be seen by the cameras, by the box person, whoever's watching. Then with our outside hand, we're going to stack it up. With our inside hand, we're going to pinch the bet so that we leave a clear demarcation of the odds and the come bet. We're going to put it down in front of the player, their position. We're going to heel off the payout. Now you put the bet down first. Then you put the payout down. We're going to heel off the payout. And we're going to say off for $34. Off for $34. Once you've been dealing for a while and no longer break in, you're not going to verbalize this as often. Very experienced dealers almost never say it unless they know they're dealing with a rookie player. And then they're going to say it just so the player knows. Now, what order do we pay? Let's say we have multiple come bets. Let me do a couple different ones. So I have 3 come bets here. I've got position next to the stick person. Then I've got the number 3 spot. And then I've got the top of the hook. Well, we always pay stuff like this. Pretty much anything that's paid from this side, as in any bets placed over here, are always paid stick to base. Stick to base. So I'm going to start off with the number 1 position, and then I'm going to just kind of go down the line. So I'm going to, as I pay this, I'm going to look at it and go 10 pays 12 plus 15 is 27. Stack it with my outside hand, pinch the bet, off for $27. There's nobody on position 2, so I didn't need to worry about it. So I go to position 3. 20 pays 24 plus 10 is 34. I'm going to cut out my $34, stack it up, my outside hand, and I heel it off. There's nobody in the 4th position, so then I look, 15 pays 18 plus 10 is 28. So I'm going to pay the $28, bring it out, and heel it off. And each time I'm going to say, off for 27, off for 34, off for 28. One thing, especially when you're dealing in red, that makes it very, very easy is you can use that pay by color trick that I showed you before. If I look at this, I just glance down at this bet right here. Well, I know that every red gets a red. And I know flat bets are paid even money, so I don't really need to worry about it. And when it comes to the odds, I also know that every red gets a white. So I can look at this and just know that I need 5 red and 2 white. I don't actually have to do any math. I can just look at it and say 5 red, 2 white. Except for the fact that you want to verbalize what the payout is. But as you get more advanced on it and you're not verbalizing it so much, you tend to just start paying it by color. Now, to answer a question that some of you may have out there, why do we pinch the bet like this? Here's why. Let's say we're on a $10 minimum bet table. Okay, right here we've got 10 odds with a $15 flat bet. So that 10 pays 12 plus 15 is 27. Now, and you will see dealers do this, and it is a huge, 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 huge no-no. You never squeeze the bet. You have to keep this separate, because here's what can happen. Let's say we squeeze the bet and bring it out and chop it off like this. Or even put it down and reset it like this. Well, what if the player says, no, I had 15 in odds? There's absolutely no way to prove that because you squeezed the bet. You turned it into this. You never squeezed the bet. And I have seen this happen on games because the dealers did this.
Anytime players get out, they're going to take it.
It is a jackpot waiting to happen. Well, it's not a jackpot. It's not going to be a huge, something like this. And that's the thing. We can stop the game for 10 minutes while we call up to the eye in the sky. Or in a situation like this, it's just $1 difference. Or the box just says give them $1, but they know that you messed up. So never squeeze the bet. So the next question that might pop into people's heads is, what about a situation like this? And let's say I'm doing this bet because it is possible, and we'll show you guys how later, it is possible that I'm paying this bet and there is a bet right here still. It is possible there's something in my way, because I know you guys are thinking we would have paid this first, but it is possible that bet is still there. So how would I pay that $34? How would I grab the bet without squeezing it? Well, once I've paid it out and stacked it up, I'm just gonna slide it out and slide it out. Then I'm gonna pick it up. Always pick it up. Don't slide the bets all the way to the plate. Always pick it up. Off for $34. That way I never squeezed it, and I still got it out there, and I managed to clamp it down so that the odds did not shift. So that is the basics of come bets. We're going to move on to show a little bit more on how they are paid and how it is possible to have a bet still sitting there. Now, one thing I want to cover real fast, because I have not covered this yet, and I didn't cover it because I wanted to wait until we got to this point. I want to cover the concept of contract bets. So what is a contract bet? A contract bet is a bet that the player cannot take back. Once it is contracted, they cannot take it back. In this situation, there's something else that we call contract bets, which is where a player says, hey, I always do this, and the dealer says, okay, you always do that. That's a contract. That just means that the dealer will remember to always do it for you, but you can take that back. But these bets, they're bets that cannot be taken back. The pass line bet, once there is a point marked, can never be taken back. Why is that? Because right now, this bet favors the house. But when point was off, this bet actually favored the player, as we covered. 8 ways to win, 4 ways to lose on the come out roll if it wasn't a point. So if we allowed the players, once there is a point, to pick that bet up, this game wouldn't exist because they would just only play the pass line. Right. And if we got a point, they'd take it down. If they didn't get a point, they'd win 2 out of every three times on average. So the casinos wouldn't even be open. So that is a contract bet. It must remain until a decision is made, win or lose. That bet can never be reduced. However, it can be increased. Players can add to their pass line bet. Why? Because they're skipping the come out roll where it favors the player, and they're going directly into when there's already a point marked, which favors the house. Here's the thing. If someone turns their $10 flat bet into a $15 flat bet, the dice roll, some number rolls, and they want to return back down to a $10 flat bet, nope. It's a contract. It's a contract bet. So since come bets are just pass line bets starting a brand new game, the flat bet on a come bet is also a contract bet. Once it travels inside the number, that means it has a point marked for it. Now it is contracted. They cannot take it down until a decision is made, win or lose. Odds are not contract bets. Players can pick them up anytime they want. If it's a come bet and they don't want to pick it up, maybe they're superstitious and they only want it off for a little while, they can turn it off, and we just put an off button on it. We don't need to signify that the flat bet is working because the flat bet can never be turned off, not while there is a point, because they cannot pick it up. So that is the concept of contract bets. So next we're going to go into some of the more advanced stuff on how come bets are paid. Okay, so as we move on to a little bit more on the come bets, let's look at if we have a few players playing come bets. Now again, we're on a $10 minimum bet table. So let's say players 1, 2, 4, and 6 are playing come bets. So the dice roll, and let's say a 6 rolls. So we go in order. We go in order from the stick person to the base dealer. That is the most important thing. That will keep you from getting lost. So we set a 6 rolls. So we're going to move this in the first position. Now we have player number 2. So this is going to move in to the second position. Now we've got player number 4. So this is going to move to the 4th spot. And then player number 6. So this one is going to move over to the 6th spot. And then the players can, of course, place some odds if they wish. They can give you their odds. Now, here's the next thing that some people tend to ask. Let's say player number 3, now that these have all moved in, player number 3 places a come bet, but the other players do not. Now let's say the 6 rolls. What order do I do these? Do I move them first or do I pay first? Neither. You continue going in the proper order, which is from the stick dealer to the base dealer. You deal with each position as they go in order 1 through 8, and you deal with them in their entirety, either paying or moving. So in this case, I would pay, then move, then pay, nothing, and then pay. So to see it in its entirety, 10 pays 12 plus 15 is 27. So this would be off for $27. 15 pays 18 plus 10 is 28. So we're paying off for 28. Now I go to number 3. I don't go over here and start paying it because position number 3 still has to come. So on for 15. When we talk about on, it is flat bet and flat bet only. So on for 15. 20 pays 24 plus 25 is 49. So off for 49. Nothing for position 5. And then 25 pays 30 plus 10 is 40. Off for 40. Now technically position 5 or position 6 is right here. So you start to run into this, especially here. Remember, you have this much space for your first 4 players. You have this much space for your next 4 players. So it gets very cramped over here. Okay. Now it is very, very important to always go in order. I have seen dealers that will do something like pay everybody first and then travel the other bets in. Well, the problem with that is that the second you pay, players are starting to reach. They're starting to reach. So by the time you've paid everybody, let's say I choose not to move that. Let's say I choose not to do it in order and I decide to pay everybody first and then move that 3rd position. It is entirely possible that by the time I have finished paying this side of the table over here looks like this. So now the dealer has to remember that these are actually brand new bets, that only this one is the one that should travel. But if they had gone in the proper order, they wouldn't have that problem. Now, for the next bit. You guys already saw how it's possible to have a flat bet next to your bet because this had traveled in before I paid 4. So I had spot number 3 with a flat bet, and then I had spot number 4 that had this entire come bet with odds. But I mentioned that it's possible to have a come bet that looks with odds and everything already there or still there from an earlier position. So let's cover how. Because now we're going to cover what happens if they already have a flat bet. Or if they already have a come bet and they place a new come bet. So there's 2 things. Now this right here is the most confusing thing for dealers in the come bet area. Start it this way and then we'll go to spot number 3. So we've got 2 players playing come bets and they're doing kind of a continuous come bet. They're keeping them out there. So let's say a 6 rolls. Okay, so 6 rolls. So I'm going to start with position number 1. And I'm always going to look inside first. So I'm going to look inside, and then I'm going to look in the cum. Because if they don't have a cum bet, then it's what we already covered. We're going to go 20 pays 24 plus 10 is 34. Pay our 34, bring it out like we've already done a few times. But instead, I look here, and then I look over here, and they also have a new cum bet. So I need to make a lightning quick decision, which is actually very, very easy. But you need to make this not really decision, but this observation. You need to make this observation. I need to look at their new cum bet, and I need to look at their old flat bet. I do not look at the odds. I only look at the flat bet. What do I see? I see a $10 cum bet, and I see a $10 flat cum bet. So their contract portion of the bet is identical. It is the same. What that means is I look at this and go 20 pays 24 plus 10 is 34, and I cut out my $34, stack it up with my outside hand, and I never lay a finger on this bet. Off and on for $34. Because as we've covered, when we pay it, it is off, and when we move the new one in, it is on. They have the same flat bet. This is extremely important. This is probably the most important thing with the cum bets. You have to understand this. If their flat bet is the same, then they are paid off and on. Off and on. Now, why is that? Well, let's take a look at something. Let's say we actually moved it out. Okay? 99% of players that play cum bets will do the exact same odds every single time. So I want you to look at the table. I want you to look at the table, and I want you to look at this bet right here, and I want you to look at this bet right here, okay? Keep looking at those. So let's say we were to actually move it off, okay? So we have a $10 flat bet with 20 odds. Off for $34, on for 10, and then the player does the same odds again, which 99% of them do. You notice that we are back in the exact same position that we were when we just said off and on for $34. You notice the table, the bets, everything looks exactly identical. That's why we don't move them. Because 99% of the time, they're going to do the same odds and nothing is going to change. So why do all these extra added motions? So, next we go to position number two. They have no cum bet, and they have no new cum bet. Okay, we're going to move this over to position 3. Right? They have no new cum bet. So now we go to position 3, and I look down here, and I see that they've got a cum bet that I need to pay, and then I look over and I see they have a new cum bet that needs to travel. So what's the decision that I need to make? What's the observation that I need to make? I need to look at the flat bets. I need to look at the flat bets and see if they are the same. They have a $15 flat bet here that is traveling inside the number. They have a $10 flat bet here that is being paid. Because these flat bets are not the same, you have to separate out what you're doing. So 15 pays 18 plus 10 is 28. So I cut out the 28, pick it up with my outside hand. Then, again, I pinch this so it does not separate. Now, here's the thing. You cannot have two bets and a payout on the table at the same time. You shouldn't. So I'm going to bring this out. When I place it down in front of the player, I'm going to pick up the new cum bet, and then I'm going to say off for $28, on for $15. Off for $28, on for $15. Now they can place their odds. But the flat bets being different means you have to bring it out and you have to travel in the new cum bet. And again, you don't want two bets and a payout sitting down on the table at the same time. So you're not going to, and I've seen dealers do this so bad. I don't see a lot of them do it, but I have seen dealers do this. Where they put out the bet, put out the payout, and then travel the new bet. That is the wrong way to do it. Wrong way to do it. So this covers the basics of the cum bets and how they pay. And, well, not the basics. This covers the entirety of cum bets and how they pay. So we will be moving on. This actually would put you at approximately the halfway point in phase 1. So next, we're going to be moving on to the dark side. Now, for people that are interested in the drills that we would run to really sink this stuff into your heads when we would teach it in a school, check us out on Patreon, because when this video releases, we will also have at least 2 combat drills released on our Patreon for our fans, and detailing how to set the combat drill up, and then how it works and the whys. Otherwise, stay tuned, because we're going to move on to the dark side. Okay guys, so now we're going to move to one of the more confusing aspects of the game. We are moving on to what's called the dark side. We're kind of flipping the switch. So we have covered up to this point the pass line bet, and how the come bet is just a brand new pass line bet. You're just starting a new game, right? So the pass line is, as we've said, betting on the point. You know, for instance, you have a $10 pass line bet, a 9 rolls. You can do odds if you like, and if the 9 rolls again to make the point, then the pass line bet wins and the odds win. And the odds win true odds. There's no house edge. Now, if a 7 were to roll, then that would lose. So the question comes up is, can you bet that? Can you bet that the point will not be made? Absolutely, yes you can. Now the first thing I want to say is that people that don't know a damn thing about this game will say, oh, you're betting with the house. No, you are not betting with the house. That is one of the dumbest things we've ever heard in our lives. If you were betting with the house wouldn't exist. The house never loses. So if a player could bet with the house, then the casinos would lose money and would be closed. There is, of course, a house edge built into this as well. Now, since the pass line bet is betting that the shooter makes the point, the don't pass is betting that the shooter does not. Now, when people ask how the don't pass works, I will tell them that it is basically flipping things around. Almost everything reverses from the pass line. So, on a come out roll, when there is no point, how does the pass line win? What rolls of the dice? 7 and 11. So if you flip that, on the don't pass, 7-11 loses. Now, on the pass line, on a come out roll, how does the pass line lose? 2, 3, and 12. So if you were to flip that around, how does the don't pass win? You're going to say 2, 3, and 12, and that's not true. 2 and 3, the don't pass wins. On a 12, it's a push. Another thing that people that don't understand the game will say is they will say that they are betting the don't pass bar. Or they will ask, what's the don't pass bar? Right? It is the don't pass bar, the 12. I love how people can read don't pass bar, but this that's in color is somehow invisible to them. It's the don't pass bar, the 12. Bar means except. So it's the don't pass except the 12. The 12 is an exemption. That is where the house edge is built in on the don't pass, is that 12. So on the don't pass, that means there's 3 ways to win, the 2 and the 3, right? The 2 only has 1 combination of dice, the 3 has 2 combinations of the dice, and there's 8 ways to lose. Now, once there is a point, at that point, the don't pass is the favorite, because it wins on a 7, right? And there is not a single number that has more combinations of the dice than the 7 does. For an 8, there'd be 5 combinations for an 8 to roll, 6 for a 7 to roll. So no matter what, once there is a point, the don't pass is the favorite. It is while the point is off that the don't pass is at a severe disadvantage. Severe, severe, severe disadvantage. Most players that lose on the don't pass either lose during the come out because of the come out roll and because of a hot come out roll, or they lose just because they happen to bet the don't pass and bump into the 20-minute shooter. That just, just happens. Now, if you can bet odds on a pass line bet, can you bet odds on a don't pass? Absolutely. It is no longer called odds. It's called a lay. Right? So it is just like the pass line bet, only it flips. For the pass line bet, it's true odds. So you bet whatever you bet to win more. If you're on the 6 and 8, you bet $5 to win 6. If you're on the 5 and 9, you bet every 2 wins 3. On the 4 and 10, it just pays double doubles whatever you bet, right? So for the don't pass, for a lay, because as we know, flat bets always pay even money, so that would pay even money if it were to win. For the lay, the don't pass version of odds, it flips. You bet more money to win less. And it's just a reversal, which means that the don't pass, it is very, very, very critical that lays are what we call proper bets. Later on in the course, at the very end of the course, I'm going to cover how to calculate an improper bets payout, but lays need to be proper. Dealers need to pay attention to the lays. So if everything flips, if you lay the 6 and 8, now you have to bet 6 to win 5. Because again, true odds, 6 ways to win, 5 ways to lose. So 6 to 5, or 5 to 6. So you have to bet 6 to win 5, which means that the lay must be in units of 6. 6, 12, 18, 24. On the 5 and 9, they must be in units of 3, because every 3 pays 2. In the 4 and 10, they just have to be even, because they pay half. Since odds pay double, lays pay half. On the 5 and 9, since odds pay 3 to 2, lays pay 2 to 3. And on the 6 and 8, since odds pay 5 to 6, lays pay 6 to 8. So it is critical to know the odds and how they pay. Now, the first twist that gets thrown in there, let's say we are on a $15 minimum bet table. So lays must be in units of 6. Now, lays are always heeled off, away from the flat bet, and they're always the closest to the dealer. So, because we pay coming around this way, the lay should be first, right? Because just like with pass line and how we pay odds first, we pay lays first. So lays have to be heeled off. If in the odd event that someone puts, say, $100 down, maybe you're on the 10, puts a black chip down for a lay, you actually need to swap it out for green so that you can heel it off. So if you're on the 6 or 8, you're on a $15 minimum bet table, they tried to do a $12 lay, they're not allowed to. Because what's the minimum bet? 15 bucks. But here's the twist. So, 5 and 9. 5 and 9, every 3 pays 2, so they have to be in units of 3, they're lays. So they decide they want to lay $15. No bet. No bet. They cannot do that bet. So let's look at this again. We are on a $15 minimum bet table. Therefore, the lay must pay the table minimum. Since 15 pays 10, that is a no bet on a $15 minimum bet table. The lay must pay at least the table minimum. What that also means is that a $21 lay on a 5 and 9 would be a no bet. Because if every 3 pays 2, that means that pays $14. Just a little shy. So the first proper bet on the 5 and 9 that would pay at least table minimum is 24. All right, 24 would pay 16. So there we go. Same thing with the 4 and 10. You run into that a lot. Because it pays half, that means they need to at least double the table minimum. So, let's talk about one more thing, and this also confuses the heck out of people. And I'm going to set these up right in front. So with a lay, and again we're on a $15 minimum bet table, so actually I don't want to do that. They could lay 40 if they wanted to, right? And that would pay 20, so they are over the table minimum. Now, things must be even. Let's look at, I'm trying to think of a good example. Look at a $20 flat bet. I'm going to set these up in front of the numbers, okay? $20 flat bet. Let's say that if the 10 were the point, player decides they want to lay 40 bucks. What does that pay? 40 on the 4 and 10. 4 and 10 reverse the odds, so it pays half. So 40 pays 20 bucks, right? What does the flat bet pay?
20.
Flat bet pays 20 bucks. So the lay and the flat bet pay the exact same, correct? Therefore, we will set up what we call a bridge. The beauty of a bridge, as long as if another dealer sets it up, you better trust that they know what they're doing. The beauty of a bridge is that when the 7-out occurs, you do not need to do any math to calculate out the payout. When there is a bridge, all you do is size into the back twice. That's all you do. Because the lay pays the exact same as the flat bet. So you just size in twice. So let's look at a $20 flat bet on the 9. Now this only works when it's in the same color. So if they lay $30, well 30 pays 20, and the flat bet is 20, so that would be a bridge. It would not work if it was green. You can't bridge this, but we could bridge this. And as my old instructor would say, the beauty of bridges is you don't have to think about it. All you have to do is hit it in the butt twice. Just size into the back twice. Just poke it in the butt twice. And you're good. So with the 6 and 8, obviously it has to be units of 6. So if it, with a $20 flat bet, you would need a $24 lay. Now here's the next twist for you. This only applies to the 5 and 9. If the flat bet is odd, it is absolutely impossible to have a bridge. Because let's think about this. Every 3 pays 2. So if you have odd numbered bet, say $15 flat bet, well, what lay would pay $15? $22.50. How in the hell can you do a $22.50 lay? You can't. So if it's odd, if the flat bet is odd, it is impossible to have a bridge on the bet. Now, at this point, we would tell players, we would tell dealers to run a very, very basic drill, just like you did at the very, very beginning, of set yourself out 2 or 3 pass line bets, and then set yourself out 2 or 3 don't pass bets. And roll the dice. On the come out roll, if a 7 or 11 were to roll, then you know you don't passes lose, and your pass line bets win. We always take the losers first. And extra one there. Then set yourself back up. Now let's say a 2 rolls. Well, if a 2 rolls, we know the pass line loses, and again we take from us around, and the don't pass wins. Do your best to leave your payouts inside the lines. Don't pay this one. This is a bet in a self-service betting area. Okay? So then you set your bets out again. What if a 12 rolls? Well, if a 12 rolls, you know the pass line loses, and the don't pass is a push, because it's barring the 12. Now, if you get a point when you roll the dice, go ahead and give yourself some odds, and give yourself some lays. Just remember how the lays must be proper. And run this 15, 20 minutes until you feel comfortable with knowing what wins, what loses, knowing how to pay the odds, how to pay the lays, when the don't pass loses, when the pass line wins, when the don't pass wins and the pass line loses. Get yourself comfortable with that, because the next step is going to be even more confusing if you have not gotten yourself comfortable with the lays and the proper lays. Okay guys, now for the fun part. So, the pass line bet is just a reversal of the don't pass. The don't pass rather is just a reversal of the pass line. Well, both sentences are actually true. The don't pass is just a reversal of the pass line bet. So the pass line bet, if someone's betting the pass line and they want to bet more numbers, they can do a come bet, which is just starting a brand new game. Only instead of using a puck to mark it, we travel the bet itself, the flat bet itself moves inside the number, and that is the puck signifying what the number is for that particular come bet. And then they're able to do odds, and we stack the odds on top, just slightly offset. And we go from there. Well, what about the don't pass? Can they do that? Well, absolutely. If you've got a pass line and a don't pass, you've got a come bet, you've got a don't come. Don't come, bar the 12. So just like the come bet, the don't come is a self-service betting area. Now, if you have multiple players betting it, which is rare, but it does happen, just like anything else, this follows the curve of the table. So if you have to, you move their bets and you tell them, hey, this is your spot. Make sure you put it right here so that I always know it's your bet. Now, the next number that rolls, now this is, again, just a reversal of the come bet. So this right here, this is in the middle of a come out roll. So if a 7 or 11 were to roll, then this would lose, just like the don't pass loses on a come out roll, right? 2, 3, or 12, this wins on a 2 or 3, pushes on a 12, right? You just pay it and you just leave it. It's a self-service betting area, okay? But if anything else happens, any other roll of the dice, it will travel. Now, come bets travel inside the number. Don't come bets travel behind the number. Now, here's the tricky thing, one of the many, many, many tricky things. You notice how narrow this is. This, again, should follow the curve of the table, but when it travels behind, if you were to have 8 people, then theoretically, to follow the curve of the table, it would look something like this. I have never once had 8 people play in the don't. Never, ever, 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 ever. But I have had up to 5. And it is very, very confusing because you have to figure out a way to put these bets behind the number and know who's got what bet. And it seems like it should be fairly easy because, like I just showed you, all you have to do, theoretically I could do something like this, theoretically, to say 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6, the 6 spots. However, that won't work. Why? How do we put the lays? Because of course they can lay it just like a come bet, they can put odds. And here's how we put the lays. Let's say we had one travel over to the 5. And the player decides they want to lay $30. They hand me $30 and say I want to lay it, I want to lay my 5 for $30. Okay, cool. I have to heel it off just like I would on the don't pass. Now, when you heel this off, there's 2 very important rules with this. 1, it's heeled off away from the bet. And 2, it's heeled off away from the box. You do not heel a don't pass this way, ever. Not towards the box. It's always away from the box. You can either go directly behind or to the side in some way, shape, or form. So now you notice how difficult this would be if I had 5 people playing the don't pass and they all had lays. You see how much space this takes. Now imagine 5 players with don't pass bets. What I have to tell people, and this is the one of the few times that I have to say this during the dice class, is you do the best you can. There is no hard and fast rule on where you place these bets. You do the best you can. Now, here's the real fun part. I'm going to show you guys how this pays. There are a lot of procedural rules to how this pays. All right, guys, so the rules to paying out don't pass bets. Look at the mess we have here. This is 3 don't comes per number. That's it, just 3. I've had up to 5, but generally I have between 1 to 3, and a lot of players won't do a lay, so it's a lot cleaner. Right, so the lays are, of course, either away from the box or directly behind. I think I've got them all away from the box. Right? And I did my best to put them into positions that I can identify where the position is. Again, you just do the best you can. So now let's look at the payout rules. So when you're paying, and most things that are up here, you pay sweeping this way, but when you're paying, say, come bets, you pay from position 1 all the way around to position 8. Now with the don't come, you're going to do it a little bit differently, and the reason for that is game protection. So think about this. Let's say a 7 out were to occur, right? So the 7 just rolled. So you're cleaning up the pass line bets, and then you're cleaning up the don't pass bets. So there's a brief period of time where a player could do what we call pass posting, where they could cheat and add to their lay, right? Or the flat bet if they only had a flat bet. So let me ask you, which player would most easily be able to reach the don't come bets? The player standing closest to the dealer. Therefore, we pay closest to the dealer first. So we pay position 8 all the way down to position 1. Next question, which number could they most easily reach? Here it would be the 10. The other side of the table, it would be the 4. It's the number that is closest to them. So the first two rules to paying the don't come is you always pay from base dealer to stick. Rule number 2 is you pay away from box towards box. Okay? The reason for that is if I'm paying here, my arms are blocking these bets, and I'm focused on this, the box can't see these bets, so the player could be cheating, could be adding to it. If I pay this first, the box has watched me pay it, and then I move on. Now if the player tries to manipulate something, well, the box watched me pay it. They know it's correct. So if anything changes, then they know the player changed it. The final thing is you pay one player at a time. Not one number at a time. You play one player at a time. Differences between the come and the don't come. The come bets, they win one number at a time. They lose all the numbers at a time. With the don't come, they win all the numbers at a time. They lose one number at a time. Because again, they're betting against one particular number. Come bets lose when a 7 comes. So all the numbers lose. Anything that has a come bet loses because they all are betting that their number rolls before a 7. The don't come are all betting that a 7 comes before the number that they are marked on. So they lose, all these lose if a 6 rolls. Whereas if a 6 rolled, all the come bets would win. So I'm going to show you how they pay. Now, some other rules. These are ones that you see get ignored a lot by dealers. Technically, the 2 numbers closest to box can only be dealt with my inside hand. The 2 numbers furthest from box with my outside hand. You notice I'm not saying particular numbers because on the other side of the table it would reverse. So the 2 closest to box, inside hand, 2 furthest from box, outside hand. The 2 in the middle, neutral, either hand. So you will actually use these for a neutral area sometimes. You will need a stopping point. So let's say a 7 out has occurred and I've already cleaned up my pass line, taken all the losers, paid the don't pass, and we'll have some bets in here that have lost, but since they're in here, we don't clean them up yet. We go straight to paying the don't. The don't comes. So I will start with position 8 and I start away from box. So I will look, position 8 I don't have a bet. This is position 7, so position 8 I don't have a bet, position 8 I don't have a bet, position 8 I don't have a bet. Over here, I have a bet. Now we always pay the lays first and then the flat bet, but we don't come back and forth to our stacks. So I'm going to say it out loud just like I would with the come bets. 40 pays 20 plus 10, so I'm going to drop cut 20 and then size in 10. Put my stacks away. And now that I've paid all of position 8, they only have one bet. I've paid all of position 8. I'm going to clear my hands. Then I'm going to stack up all their money. Now, don't worry about giving them a rainbow stack. It's okay. Stack up their money into their position. Since he only has one bet, that's all I need to worry about. Now, you notice I pay with my inside hand. Now, I'm going to move it, but I'm going to move it to a neutral area. But I'm going to put it in position 8 so I don't mess anything up and accidentally take someone else's flat bet along with it. Now I switch to my outside hand, okay? But as I'm pulling this up, I'm going to say, no 4. Touch the don't come, and then put it behind the pass line, heeled off, just like you would with any other bet. So now that I paid position 8, now I don't have to say no 8, even though I stopped there, because he wasn't betting on the 8. So it was just no 4, because that was all he bet on. So now I moved to position 7, nothing. But here, position 7 has a bet. So I'm going to hit it in the butt twice. Then I'm going to look, no position 7. But over here, I've got a position 7. 24 pays 16. I'm going to have to switch checks here. 24 pays 16. Size in there. Nothing over here. So I'm going to clear my hands. Now here's why I'm clearing my hands. Because they're making sure that I'm not in collusion with the player and have chips palmed in my hand while I'm stacking. Right? So I clear my hands. Now I stack up their bets, and you can use 2 hands. It's okay if you're able to split your attention without making a mistake and locking up someone else's money, because I've seen people stack up someone else's flat bet or lay. Right? So I stack both of them up, and now I'm going to move them. So no 5, but I have to go to a neutral area. Now I stack up onto the rest of their bet, and now I'm going to move it all over. Now, This is a lot to move over. I can split it up. No 9. And now I'm going to send it. I touched the don't come. Don't just hover. You don't go straight out. Touch the don't come. And now I'm going to send it out to position 7. This stack is so large, I'm not going to heel it off. Okay. Also, if you're a roulette dealer, sometimes you will have these just, you will have 3 or 4 stacks. And if you're a roulette dealer, by all means, send it on out as best you can. Most dice dealers, kind of specialists in dice, some deal roulette also, but I could go pretty high up and still send this out. So I'm going to send that out to position 7, and I'm not going to heel it. It's right on the seam of the table underneath. So next I move on to position 6. Position 6, I've got a bet here. So 20 pays 10. Right? Now here's a trick you can do with these. I'm going to pick up half of it, I'm going to size in and drop that off. That does not mean it's a bridge. I've seen dealers that then size in twice. Like, what are you doing? And then the flat bet pays the flat bet. No position 6, no position, no, I have position 6 right here. Right? So, 12 pays 10, same thing. I'm going to pick up this 2, size in, boom. And then the flat bet pays the flat bet. No 6, no 6. Clear my hands and stack it all up. This, by the way, is another reason that don't do this trick unless you are able to pay attention. Because I've seen dealers that ignore this now because it looks like someone else's leg. It looks like a bridge, it looks like someone else's bet. I'm going to stack it all up, and again, don't worry about giving them a rainbow. That's okay. Now, since this is a neutral area, I'm just going to start with this hand to begin with. No 6. Too much for me to do all at once. No 10. I've touched the don't come. I moved out to position 6. Position 5. Nothing, 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 nothing. Position 5 has not been in the don't come. Position 4. It's a bridge, so I just got to hit the butt twice. No position 4. Position 4 right over here. 24 is going to pay 20, but I can just lift it up. Size in, nothing, nothing. Clear my hands, stack them up. Again, I can use this hand, so no 6, no 10, and straight out to position 4. No, nothing for position 3. Over here I've got a position 3, 30 pays 20, and 10. You do the best you can. I left this, didn't I?
Yes.
I did.
Okay, never mind. No more stupid questions.
Yeah, I left that. And that's going to happen. And you catch it, you fix it. Well, you'll let the box know and then you fix it. So
right now.
we'll have people that will, will ask, well, how do I pay these? Where do I pay these? You do the best you can. You just do the best you can. So position 3 here, good. Over here, position 3, hit it in the butt twice. And over here, I also have a position 3, right? 30 pays 15. And then I'm going to size in. Notice I'm using my inside hand. And clear my hands. There's no particular order to stacking them up, but I recommend that you don't do this. So I'm going to stack up these bets. Again, I'm not worried about leaving a rainbow. But I stack them up in their position. Okay. No 4.
So you in theory don't leave them behind.
Correct. So I don't accidentally leave it in someone else's spot, or leave the bet. Okay, so no 4. Now I have to go to a neutral area. No 5, or I should be grabbing with that hand anyway. Go to a neutral area. I don't have to say no 8 because they weren't betting against me. No 9. Off to position 3. Move on to 2. So over here, 40 pays 20. Size in. 36 pays 24. This is a little bit more of an advanced move, so you don't want to do this all the time, but I could do this. Okay, I'm not going to manipulate a flat bet ever, just like on the pass line. And right over here, 30 pays 20. Size in. Clear my hands. Stack it up. No 5. Go to the neutral area. No 9. No 10. Out to position 2. Now, position 1. Hit in the butt twice, both of them are bridges. Clear my hands. Stack them up. Yes, sometimes you'll be doing this. Yes, you'll have your outside hand in this area. Not a huge deal. No 4. No 6. touch the don't come, go out to the player. And that is how you pay the don't come. It is very, 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 very complex. A lot of rules. Once you have it down and you truly understand it, it's actually pretty easy. For those of you guys that are going to be looking for a drill on this, the drill that we used to run in the schools, or that I used to run for my students, I will have that, when this video goes up, I will also have that going up on our Patreon for our fans. So, and it'll be up there for anybody that's a second tier and higher fan. So, if you need that drill, go ahead and check us out on Patreon. Otherwise, this technically concludes the first phase of the course. Now, we're going to ignore these towers for a second. I do want to cover two final small things. As you know with a pass line bet, even though there's a point, you can always add to your bet, right? So if you have a $15 bet, you're at max odds, you want to do more odds, you can always add to your pass line bet. So then that gives you a greater amount of odds, 3, 4, 5, or 10 times or whatever. However, it's not the best bet, but players can do it. They can add to their pass line. You just can never take it away. The don't pass is, of course, reversed. You can never add to your don't pass once there's a point, but you can always take it away. You can always make it smaller. But once you do, you can't put it back. So they all flip. Same thing with a don't come. You can make it smaller, you can take it down. Some players will never choose an 8 or 9. So if they have a don't pass and an 8, or sorry, 6 or an 8. If 6 or an 8 rolls, you go to travel it and they say no action. You wave your hand over it. That signifies to the cameras that you didn't forget this bet, but that the player doesn't want any action. You don't move it. Right? Because that's the equivalent of coming over here and then the player saying, take it down. Cool. Give it back to them, and they say, they put it right back in the don't come. So you just, exactly. So you just no action it, and you're good to go. So they cannot choose to put a don't come behind a number, whereas a pass line player can choose to put a come bet into the number. It's called a put bet. They can come, instead of going through the come, they could pick their number with a come bet. They could say, I want to put the 6 with 25 odds. Cool. Of course that's allowed because you can always make the bet bigger, so you can always just come straight down. That's why a player walking up after there's a point is allowed to just put their money right down onto the pass line. It's not the best bet, but they're allowed to, and then put odds. Right? There are better bets, and you guys will learn that in phase 2. So if they're allowed to do that after there's a point, of course they could do that with a come bet. It's called a put bet. They can put directly into the point. It favors the house. They skip the come, which they're a 2-to-1 favorite to win, and go straight into the number where the odds are against them. So of course the house is going to allow it. Of course that's within the rules of the game. Whereas you cannot put behind a number because it favors the player. It's against the house. But what if you want to pick a number and bet against it? What if? Well, for those of you guys that know how to deal Bach, this is actually going to be a little bit easier as far as one of the more tricky parts of it. They can do what's called a direct lay. There is no flat bet. Flat bets always pay even money. But they can do a direct lay. They pick their number and they directly lay it. Lay it, which means the odds, which means they are betting more to win less. Right? Now here's the thing. If we allowed people to just do a straight direct lay, let's say someone said, I want to lay the 8 for 30 bucks, right? Because 30 would pay 25, right? Every 6 pays 5. Right? Since it's a lay, it's paying the odds. Well, if we just allowed that, it's basically a free bet. It's an invisible bet in a way because it doesn't favor anybody, neither the player nor the house, because it's paying true odds. So where's the house making their money? Commission. 5% commission. 5% commission. It's called the VIG. All right, they have to pay the VIG. They have to pay a 5% VIG up front in most places. Some places afterwards, but I actually don't know of any out here. They have to pay it up front, and it must be proper. So if someone said, I want to do a $75 lay on the 5, again, it's called a direct lay. You put a lay button on it. You don't heel it. You put a delay button on it. 75 would pay 50. 5% of that is $2.50. Now we have what we call courtesy lays in craps, or courtesy commissions, courtesy vig. So instead of rounding up like we usually would, at the $50 mark, most of the time it's rounded down. 25 and 50 are the two spots that are generally rounded down. 25 would be 1 1/4, so we charge $1. 26, we would charge $2. 50 would be 2 1/2. We're actually going to charge 2, whereas generally on a vig, if it hits the 50-50 mark, we go up. And in this case, we're only going to charge the 2, and they pay it up front. So that 5% is the house edge. Now, one thing that does confuse people sometimes, we say direct lay. So someone could say, I want to lay the 4. It's actually very common, the 4 and 10. I want to lay the 4 for $100 or for $200. And I would pay $100. $5 vig. The vig is always on the smallest amount. There's 2 times that we have vigs in craps, and it's always on the smallest amount between the bet and the payout. So in this case, a $200 bet, the payout is $100, so which is smaller, $100. So the vig is based off that $100. It's always going to be based off the smallest amount. Now, verbiage. Players will say, a player might throw this to you and say, no 4. No means they want to lay it. So if someone throws me 205 and says no 4, that means that they want a $200 no 4, $200 no 4, $200 lay against the 4 with their $5 vig, $5 commission. Now if they say I want to take my lay down before it wins or loses, they say hey I want to take it down, because of course you can take a lay down, you take odds down, they get their commission back. So we would give their commission back and we would hand them off their lay. Now for the final thing that can confuse people from time to time. Now this is in general. There's a few casinos that will do it differently. But for the most part, this is how it's going to be done. Let's say somebody says, I want a $100 no 10. Cool. That's going to be $2 commission, right? Because it pays $50, right? So let's say the dice roll maybe an 8 rolls. And then they say, let me get a $100 no 4. Cool. That pays $50. What's the vig? $3. Vig is $3. Because if a 7 were to roll, how much are they winning? They're winning $100. 50 and 50. What is 5% of 100? $5. It's $5. So they don't get to pay $2 and $2. It's $2 and $3. It's totaled up. Totaled up. Which also means, let's say you're on a $10 minimum bet table, and the player says, I want a $20 no 10 and a $20 no 4. And they bet it all at the same time. $20 no 10, $20 no 4. Cool, $1. It's going to be $1 because they both win $10. So that combines to $20. That means that their vig is only going to be $1. If someone wanted a $75 no 5, and then they later on bet a $75 no 9, they were charged $2 here, they were charged $3 here. Because they will win $100. It totals up, we add it up. Now this officially concludes phase 1 of the dice course. Again, don't forget, if you need the drill, check us out on Patreon for all of our level 2s and above. Otherwise, phase 2 should be coming shortly. Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye now.